Hello, and welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I'm your host, Chris Becker, and I'm excited to have you join us. Whether you are new to the amazing and growing alcohol-free community or someone who is already familiar, we hope you enjoy our program. This is where you can hear from some people making a real difference, whether as brewers and creators of amazing beverages, influencers in the community, retailers, authors, storytellers, and more. You'll be hearing from some amazing people and hopefully learn some new things about the growing world of alcohol-free. We will be using a few segment formats and hosts as we aim to break it down and bring it all together. Our goal is simple: to build awareness about this great community and help make alcohol-free fun, easy, and tasting great. So here we go. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I am looking forward to the episode you are about to hear where I get to meet with Lila Volkas, a holistic nutrition consultant and food and beverage wellness workshop facilitator, including in the corporate space. So we get a chance to talk a bit about what's happening with non-alc in some of the other forums that are out there besides obviously the more traditional social settings. So looking forward to kind of diving into that category and hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I am excited to welcome Lila Volkas here to the show, holistic nutrition consultant and food and beverage workshop facilitator. We're going to dig into that a bit more. So I know there's a bit of mouthful, but welcome, Lila.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you as well. So we had a bit of a chance to chat before we started recording, and you work in the corporate space, and that is still some of my world, but especially in earlier days and years. Want to get into that, but before we do, just for everybody listening, can you set the table a bit in terms of who you are, digging a bit more into what you do professionally, but also a bit of your backstory. How did you bring some of the things we're going to talk about together with what you do from a consulting perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, I am a holistic nutrition consultant and workshop facilitator focusing on corporate team building. I'm based in Oakland, California, and I really got started teaching food, beverage, and wellness workshops in 2013 when I taught my very first kombucha brewing workshop. And
wow.
I absolutely, it's been a long time. So
was that a team building, like a company team building event?
No.
Or?
So
okay.
I started teaching I taught my first corporate kombucha class here in the Bay Area because yes, that is a thing in 2017.
Okay.
So I was doing food education just because I felt really passionate about it. And that inspired me, along with my own health journey, to go back to school for holistic nutrition. And then I merged those together, my love of teaching, as well as, my pursuit of wellness and love of food into my business.
And before you added the nutrition and kind of your personal journey into that, were you doing more traditional corporate consulting before that, or what did you do before that?
So before that, in 2013, I was still in university. I was volunteering at my student food co-op and found my community there and started teaching community-based workshops. And so from there, I kind of graduated from university. I went to school in Canada, in Vancouver, and made my way with my art background. I was doing food illustration and writing for magazines, and then kind of one thing led to the next, and I found myself in a nutrition training program, and I was like, this is the thing. This is what I've been waiting for. And so that helped to kind of create a good platform and umbrella for all the things that I wanted to share. So I am, from my connection to the corporate world is usually as an outsider.
Yeah.
But I've been a little, had a window into so many different companies and cultures and scenarios with my work as a corporate team building facilitator through the lens of food and drink.
Okay. Well, I wish I had met you 10 years ago when I was doing a lot of consulting in Vancouver on the road, And this would have been the furthest thing from what we were actually doing, even though it was probably much needed. So, but with that in mind, like the corporate angle, what's the door opener? Because my experience is, might do a cooking class to do team building or something like that. Are you finding that there's been a lot of interest in terms of bringing nutrition and a holistic message into what might be in the past more traditional corporate events or team building?
Yeah, I would say that team building can take a lot of different forms. It can be a, community connection driven thing where, there's a facilitator and it's around connecting with each other in this like in-person live. You can connect through team building by sharing, an experience together. You can learn through, having a fun experience. So there's a lot of different flavors of that. And there's a lot of different initiatives that corporate companies are looking to kind of solve for in that. So I really fit the team fun, which is absolutely an area of department, plus wellness. So a lot of folks will have a mental health awareness month or a wellness month or different wellness initiatives, depending on their potentially sponsored by their insurance provider as, preventative medicine. It really depends on the company. And, I often am there for a holiday or a wellness initiative or just for general, this is this quarter's activity.
That's interesting. And then we kind of beyond that. So I can see from an insurance perspective, if there are programs that your piece would fit really nicely in there to add some fun to maybe what's otherwise a drier kind of set of actions that people are being kind of incented to do through their healthcare spending account or whatever it might be. What's the reaction, maybe for the sponsors, the people that have been bringing you in, but also the people in the events? Are you surprised by the feedback you get? Does everybody rather be out at the bar after with the tab being paid for by the company, but they've been asked to go to the nutrition event? Or like, good and bad, like what's the feedback you've been getting?
Yeah, well, both. So, the person who chooses to organize their event with me usually is a, executive assistant. They're an HR. They're the culture committee, or they might just be a participant of a team. So they're definitely excited or think that their group will like this. But not everybody does. My most popular class last year and this year as well are my Mocktail mixology classes. So we're applying mixology concepts to non-alcoholic ingredients. I'm introducing these teams. Most of them have never had a non-alcoholic cocktail before and maybe wouldn't ever have one again, but they are getting an introduction with me because they're being paid to be there. So I get this very interesting audience who some are super like, this is part of their lifestyle, they're alcohol free or they're interested in wellness. And some of them, I often ask, what's your favorite drink of the moment? Answer, whiskey neat. And they're skeptical. They sit there with their arms crossed. But those folks, when I ask, hey, after our first drink, what do you think? And I see their face, they taste it, and they're like, all right. This is more interesting. This is more tasty than I thought it was going to be. And that deeply is very satisfying to me. And so I love being this very friendly, accessible, introduction to the non-alc space for corporate, employees.
That's great. And because I'll compare that to one of the experiences we had with Better Roads early on, which was very heavily in the e-commerce marketplace side of the business. And that was for a variety of reasons, but probably the biggest of them was the pandemic. So everyone's at home, alcohol consumption skyrocketed, not just generally, but not just because it's home consumption. That makes obvious sense when you can't go to a restaurant, but it went up across the board. It went up totally. But also non-alc purchasing, obviously we saw that. Bar tools and making home bars, home cooking, high-end cooking materials and equipment, that all shot up because people were looking to do all kinds of different things at home. One of the things we saw with, kind of like you said, we would get executive assistants or chiefs of staff or whatever it happened to be, depending on the size of the company, calling us up when we're doing an event. It's a Zoom event. We want to send all this stuff to to people's houses. And some of the feedback we were getting from our customers were, back before the pandemic, you were at the office and everyone went out to the pub after work and people were drinking, but the non-drinker or the person who wasn't drinking that day or for whatever reason they weren't drinking at that event could kind of, without raising any notice, get a soda water or a mocktail or a non-alc beer, whatever have you. But when the events went online, it had this weird effect. The company's like, okay, we're doing the happy hour, virtual happy hour. And they would send booze to everyone's houses, and it forced some of the customers we'd hear from was they would kind of have to raise their hand and say, when we went to the pub, nobody would say anything, so I was just not drinking. But now that you're shipping alcohol to my house, I kind of have to say. So it was kind of created this event where people were virtually drinking together, but practically drinking alone. That was the other aspect, which was, it's not the same. So we heard a lot of that, and these non-drinkers or moderate drinkers or people who weren't drinking that day had to voice what otherwise wasn't something they voiced. Did you hear, what kind of feedback were you getting from those folks with your event?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in addition to, my mocktail mixology class, I have about 30 additional classes.
Oh, wow.
that all focus on food, beverage, and wellness. So they were coming to me for a kombucha brewing class or an elixir making class, which is what I started before I did my mocktail mixology, which is drinking chocolate and herbs and kind of very functional forward beverages. So they were coming to me for something. They were like, okay, we're tired of the regular happy hour. We want to do something different. Let's do a kombucha making class or an elixir or a healthy snack or healthy dessert class. So I often get the people that want to do something that's a little bit more holistic or healthy.
Yeah.
However, I also occasionally, host straight up cocktail classes or a hybrid. And my strategies around that is to make everyone feel included and make all the drinks feel special. And I, want to welcome the folks who exclusively drink alcohol in my mocktail classes as well. So in there, if someone says, hey, if you were going to add alcohol to this, what would you add? I offer that, the same way I would answer a question as with a mocktail question. So I would say, I have seen some, things that made me feel uncomfortable of the executive asking people to raise their hands of who's making a mocktail. Not necessary to call people out, or some people making fun of other people who are drinking non-alc. And so that's not often, but it does happen. Okay. So I'm just aware of how normalized drinking alcohol is in corporate culture and in socializing settings in general. And that, my classes end up being a really inclusive place where you don't even have to think about it. You don't need to send people different kits. I make my kits because so I send kits to folks for my virtual classes. Okay. So that's about 80% of what I still do is virtual. And then whatever comes my way, I do in-person stuff. I live in the Bay Area, the hub of startups and big companies. So I'm driving around also doing in-person classes as well. But I try and make my kits and all my offerings very allergy friendly. As a nutritionist, I know, I'm aware of allergies and just friendly in general for all different types of eaters and drinkers.
Oh, cool. And I know it's been a few years since the pandemic. Are you noticing if it's 70-30 online, offline? Is the in-person coming back with a storm, or is it kind of settled to an equilibrium of your online versus in-person, or?
Yeah, it's still, just the volume that I can capture virtually across the whole United States. It's still, for my business, mostly virtual still. Okay. But I've seen it, the in-person events bump up a little bit more. So maybe it's like 75% virtual, 25% in person. But it also is unique to like my specific offerings. And sometimes, they're wellness and beverage and food oriented. And that's, some people want a regular straight up cocktail class, or they want to go axe throwing, and those aren't my things. So
Right. Anything that you're seeing in terms of the types of companies? Is it across the spectrum, and also are you seeing a trend there? Like, I started out more with these types of companies, but now I'm really starting to see it's going more mainstream. Like, what are you seeing in terms of kind of how it's finding its way within the various parts of the economy or companies?
yeah, I think non-alc, beverages are becoming more mainstream, becoming more cool, which is amazing. I love it. And I see companies across the board of different industries. So from large, tech companies that the name of, to law offices, biotech, startups, software, even nonprofits will hire me to do stuff for their teams as well. So it's across the board. And it is just interesting to see, I have the data from since I've been started this. So I went full time in my business in 2019 before the pandemic. So I have data of like what workshops were popular at different times, and how many people were in each one. And so it's interesting to see the numbers change, as kombucha was like, I was the most well known for my kombucha classes for years.
Okay.
And the kombucha bubble, I think, is kind of popped. It's kind of like common knowledge. People aren't as interested in learning how to make it. Maybe they know that it takes effort to take care of.
Well, then there's like Olipop and all these mainstream beverages that have scaled, and they have the probiotic kind of in it. So it's not as much of a separate category as it used to be, at least from the functional ingredient aspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say I love seeing the rise of non-alc. So for me personally, I don't drink alcohol because it doesn't make me feel great. I don't abstain. I will try a drink here or there, but just with my journey with kind of chronic illness, I just orient towards how can I feel good as much as possible. So that means not drinking alcohol.
Yeah, which is
very much
more and more of the podcast, more on the health and wellness, and we don't kind of come out against, but from a nutrition perspective and from a mental and physical health perspective, we do this podcast, but I'm also a total podcast junkie, and Diary of a CEO had a podcast just last week with a nutrition and addiction counselor, and kind of got into the science of it, and it's all kind of fairly consistent. So not just the non-alc classes, but the classes you're seeing, like what are the trends, like this year, and maybe based on what you're seeing, say next year and the year after, what would be some of the types of team building and events and topics that you're seeing or expect to see companies looking for?
Yeah. So it's all about, tapping into what is currently popular and what may be popular in the future. So with, it's been interesting to explore some of my classes. So I have I would say, I call it Mocktail Mixology. It's like the basic kind of class is my most booked class, whereas some of my other more specialty classes, I have a tea non-alcoholic cocktail class that is not as frequently booked. And this is my interpretation of the people are ready for the like mocktail basics, but they may not be totally ready. It's not as widespread popular to book a niche non-alc class.
Right. They're still at the
However,
generic.
yeah, they're still
broad,
at the generic. However, I've been experimenting because I am just about to host a new class, which is a canned RTD non-alc cocktail tasting. And I'm really excited about this because people always ask me about brands and what brands do I recommend. And I have a whole like show and tell aspect. I focus a lot in the regular mocktail class on food-based non-alc mixology, using what you have in your kitchen, herbs, spices, etc. But then I do like to educate about brands. And so this is tasting one classic inspired RTD, one aperitif and one functional beverage, talking about the flavors, doing like a whole wine tasting experience,
Fun.
except with RTDs. So
Okay.
I'm really, really stoked about that one.
Okay. I could see once you get to that point where you're actually tasting what's out there, first of all, it'd be fun to talk about. And there's so many that you could choose from. It gives you, if you've got a client that wants to bring you back every month, either for different teams or the team loves it and wants to make it part of their normal social events calendar, you could keep going, not just in mocktails, but into non-alc wines or non-alc beers,
Yeah,
and kind of go
totally.
down there with that same, so that people aren't having to mix stuff, or they can do that, but they can also just taste, kind of more,
Yes.
more focus on that part. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's the plan. I think I'm just, I'm not sure. This is a gauge of what people are interested in.
Yeah.
I know there are beer tasting,
Sure. That one's more
classes
common.
out there, and they do include non-alc sometimes, or maybe, but like, are people interested enough is to get 20 people to do a non-alcoholic beer tasting on
Right.
company's dollar.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So maybe I've been working in the corporate world way too long. So I'm picturing these events, and I have this picture. Let's say it's more of a bigger company, bigger event. So I'm picturing you got a little bit of baby boomers, you got a little bit of Gen X, you got a little bit of millennials, and you got some Gen Z. And you kind of alluded to it, some maybe cringy moments with different ones. And I'm in my caricature of that, I'm seeing the various demographic stereotypes within the room just talking past each other or creating cringy moments. Like, what are you, in terms of what you do, which is fairly progressive? I mean, you're in the Bay Area, you're working in a new nutrition, you're bringing it to a corporate world. Can you talk about it from a demographic perspective, and without giving away names, and maybe but add a little color to some of these moments where you've seen the different perspectives? And it might not just be demographic or generational, it could be the roles and functions that people have in companies. But in my mind, I picture it, and the experience I've had, it's very generational, where I get the different cross currents of perspectives on this. But like, what do you see any of that in these rooms when you're with groups around the different perspectives within different kind of cadres within the overall group?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that it ultimately depends. There's not like an across the board, all baby boomers are like this and like all Gen X is like this. But I have noticed that one depends on the company. If it is a company that has a lot of folks based in the Bay Area,
Right.
more I don't know, experimental, health-minded locations, I would say, by the water in
Sure.
different areas, then maybe more people know what an adaptogen is. Or it depends on the demographic, but I would say, like, I have a whole range from, I teach classes with interns, I teach classes with the executives, like the whole range. And I would say, depending on where people live, probably would be the number one kind of
Interesting. Okay.
ranking on, like, if I were to assume if they've heard about non-alc beverages
Sure.
or not.
Okay.
The next would be kind of like the company and who this group is, because I work with various healthcare companies, or even like startups, or people who are adjacent or doing something that is cutting edge, new, also
Right.
potentially.
Sure.
And then for sure with the ages, but I've seen some really interesting stuff. For example, one class that I hosted for a very well-known tech company, the demographic was women in their late 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
And I asked folks, what's your favorite drink of the moment? I love that question. And 2 people out of this group held up THC infused seltzers.
Yes.
And they went and got them, and people were interested. And that was like a what moment for me, because that just got me thinking about even cannabis's place in the workplace.
Yes.
But just that with the demographic, with what we're talking about, I was very surprised, but also delighted that people are becoming more open-minded.
Yeah, we're seeing that in terms of our retail accounts and that category. It goes state by state, but there is a huge increase in the consumption of hemp-based THC-infused seltzers. There's the hemp. We won't go down this path, but there's hemp-based Delta 8, and then there's the traditional cannabis industry, which are actually at war with each other to some extent because of the growth of the Delta and the hemp-based in California, for example. So we're seeing that a lot. That's been a big growth area. How that relates to what you're drinking at lunch in the workplace, that's a different matter. But maybe instead of smoking a spliff on the loading dock, they're having a THC seltzer.
Yeah,
at the lunch
totally.
at lunch. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. No, it brings up so many questions.
Yeah, which is part of the appeal to some extent, I think, in terms of that demographic being able to purchase those types of products. And what we're seeing is it's actually as an alternative to alcohol. It's not in addition. And even then, it still has a path or a complementary aspect to the other non-alc beverages. So if you're drinking a THC seltzer, you can't really pound 6 of them, or you shouldn't. You can almost, depending on the dosage, which are fairly low, and states are coming out with restrictions, like it's 1, maybe 2, or you've got to spread it around. So then you're still looking for something to have as a part of that beverage experience for that particular day, which isn't only that, but it can include that. So we're seeing a lot of that as well. As you go forward, so we're kind of painting a picture of where you're seeing or where you're either out of interest sake choosing to focus, or based on the demand that you're seeing where you see the opportunity to focus. Is it going deeper into the beverage events and experiences, or will you go wider into other types of health and wellness related events? Where's the future taking you?
Yeah, I feel pretty in the non-alc sphere.
Okay.
I feel that it is an amazing vehicle for so many things, to talk about functional ingredients, to talk about being present while connecting, to talk about health. And so I, see more offerings for the corporate sphere, more education for the corporate world around the benefit of offering non-alc team building, specifically non-alc mixology, to hit that kind of spot and offer
it's fun.
equally as elevated things at their live events as well. And I am also expanding from, my corporate events are most of my business, but I still offer things to the public. And so I feel like a very passionate educator. I want everyone to have the tools to make these delicious and complex drinks. So in that, I have created with Chris Marshall the Mocktail School, which is
fun.
now 4-part live virtual class for folks who want a deep dive into non-alc mixology. So we just finished our first cohort of 9 people, and it was super fun. And so we went through everything from the context of the non-alc space to thinking about just my non-alc mixology philosophy, like what are the 5 things you want to balance your drinks with, into ingredients and how to use them, into basic mixology skills, because a lot of folks are either coming in, from different industries. Now, most of these people are in the non-alc industry. They're wanting to open a non-alc bottle shop, or they're already doing that, or they want to create a side hustle of a mocktail cart or something like that. And so a lot of folks want to offer this. It's personally connected to them, but they don't have all the skills to be able to put that together. And so that's where I've kind of put together all these things where I'm constantly educating people about stuff, creating recipes. And so I just kind of offer how I think about that, and a structure to learn that, and some practice in there. So that's been really cool.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to lay out and promote the various ways that people can follow up, including your work with Chris. But before we go there, I have to ask,
Yes.
you're at home, you want a mocktail. What's your go-to? What's your favorite? What are you best at?
At this moment, it is, it's almost, it is summer. I want something that is refreshing, maybe a little bit energizing because it's like light later. So I find myself often reaching for tea as an ingredient to non-alc cocktails. So some jasmine tea, some Aplos Calm, love Aplos.
Yeah, me too.
And then also adding some perfect puree yuzu concentrate, and it is delicious and pretty simple. No juicing needed. I might doctor it up with
Pretty
an
fancy,
extra.
but
Okay, all right. I'm a fancy gal. I like to do things up. Every once I'm like, I tell people I'm like, this is a very simple recipe, and we're still like mixing things and squeezing things and rolling things and other things. So I like to put the culinary spin on things.
Okay,
here.
and it's cool to see that both what you're doing as a career is also something. Obviously, it's clear that and you can really tell that you love it on the mixology side. So congratulations. Let everyone know how can we reach you. What's the best way or ways?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram, Lila Volkas, my first and last name, and my website, same thing, lilavolkas.com. You can find my corporate offerings. You can find my different other non-alc offerings and consulting stuff there, as well as public workshops. And then you can also find me at the Mocktail School on Instagram. It's Mocktail School, and the website is the Mocktail School. And we'll have continued cohorts coming up in addition to continued additional courses. So this is our fundamentals course, and we're in the works on creating an intermediate and advanced courses of different kinds to capture anyone who wants to go deep in non-alc mixology.
That is amazing. Thank you for the time, Lila Volkas, holistic nutrition consultant, and obviously extraordinaire at bringing team events together for all things health and wellness, but even deep dive on mixology and non-alc drinks, which is great for the community and all the makers that are out there that I know would love to hear and see how you're bringing this to the corporate world. So thanks so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Take care.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a message on social media or through email at hello@betterroads.com. Great to be here with you all together. Take care.